viewers, you're welcome to TV Metro Mail. You are watching Catch Up, and I am Imamul Haq. In Catch Up, as you know, that we invite people, those who have interest in politics or those who are actively engaged in politics. Today, I am joined by Doly Begum, and we all know she is. She has made a history during last provincial election. She has made many of us proud, and she will be with us today. She is our special guest, and we also have some community members. Those will be joining us. Let me bring them on screen, I think. Thank you very much, Dolly. Thank you very much, Shaukat Rushdi, Lolita Ohab, and Muhammad Abedin Khan. So let me introduce Shaukat Rushdi, because I know you know Doly Begum. So I don't need to, she doesn't need any introduction, at least in our community. Shaukat Rushdi is a seasoned journalist, is a media analyst, and Lolita Afrin Ohab, she is a business entrepreneur, and Muhammad Abedin Khan, he is a former civil servant, and currently he is teaching at George Brown College. So welcome you all to our show, and as you know that today we will be discussing community issues with Doly Begum. So you are free to ask anything, but before moving to your questions, let me ask Doly Begum, if I ask you to make a elevator pitch, what would be your elevator pitch? Let's start with that.
Thank you so much, Imam. Thank you to all of you for being here today and for making the space for me to be able to share some of the work that I have been doing. It's always a pleasure to be with TMM, TV Metro Mail, and the work that you do, especially highlighting a lot of the issues, is so important. So if I was to make a short elevator pitch, I would tell you what I say at the door, which is, I'm Doly Begum. I'm the local MPP for the area. I'm running for re-election in Scarborough Southwest, and I've worked very hard for the past 4 years. There is only one promise that I made in 2018, which was that regardless of how you voted, I will make sure that I represent our local community and I take the issues. I listen to the issues, I listen to the local community, and I take the concerns and the voice of our community members to Parliament. And over the past 4 years, I have done just that. I've made sure that our community issues are highlighted, and I have represented this community, and I hope to continue doing this. And I hope that with all of your support, I can continue doing that work I have been doing for the past 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doly. Doly, before I move to our panelists, those who are here, let me ask you one question. I remember that before, during your last election, we had similar kind of conversation as well. During last provincial election, you ran a very successful campaign. So you must have learned a lot from that. And again, this election, you are running a interesting campaign. So how it is different, whether you are feeling any different challenges during this election, if you just share your experience, then we'll move to our panelists.
Thank you so much. I think the last election, there's a lot of energy that came from, this is the first time, especially from the Bangladeshi community, it was the first time that we're seeing a very big campaign. So there is a lot of energy for that as well. But there's a lot of people who didn't know me personally. So what we're finding this time, and I see Nusrat Apu joined as well, what I'm seeing this time is that because of the work that we have done over the past 4 years, it's a much bigger campaign. We have much more resources, and we also have a lot of knowledge that we did not have in 2018. So this time we have, this is a lot of the same people who were in 2018, especially a lot of familiar faces from the Bangladesh community, but also from my campaign team from Scarborough Southwest. People who live in the riding have come back, but we also have a lot of new people. So on a normal day, you'll actually see about 30, 40 people coming in to canvass, go outside. And on a weekend, it's actually sometimes 60, 70 people that show up to volunteer, which is just incredible. And we're really proud of that.
Thank you very much, Doly. So now let us move to panelists. But before that, we also have Nusrat Jahan, a practicing lawyer and community member. Welcome you too as well to our show. Thank you. So we'll start with Shaukat Rushdi. I think before we, starting this show, you were saying that you have some hard questions for Doly Begum. So if you are ready, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Imamul. Actually, it is not very hard question, but everyone is thinking about this. It is not only to Doly Begum herself, but it is about her party also. First, I want to thank Doly Begum to represent Bangladeshi Canadians in Canada, the only elected representative, any level of government or the parliament, legislative assembly, federal government, or local government. So she made us proud, the Bangladeshi Canadians. So she is the only representative. That's very important. And she has managed not only pushing forward the liberal candidate who won 4 times in a liberal stronghold, but she also defeated the conservative contender. So now the question is, we have seen that NDP has been the official opposition party, and last debate, TV debate we have seen, and it seems to be that Liberal Party and NDP has accepted the Progressive Conservative is going to form the government, and are they complacent? NDP is complacent with becoming the official opposition once again, or you are thinking about winning the election and form the government?
I would say absolutely not. And I think you'll see that in the work that we're doing in this campaign, as well as some of my colleagues. I know there is 40 of us across the province, 40 NDP MPPs. I can't speak for the Liberal Party, but I know that that in our riding, we have an amazing momentum to make sure that we once again defeat the Doug Ford candidate, the PC candidate we have in here, as well as across Toronto. If you go from our riding to Beaches to Danforth, and then continuing on until Davenport to Humber River, Black Creek, we have amazing NDP MPPs who have been representing their communities. And one of the things I think is really critical is when you see the momentum in our campaigns and in the communities that we go to. So, for example, this afternoon I was door knocking in a neighborhood that I didn't have a lot of support in 2018, but I wanted to make sure that I go back again to be able to say, what kind of questions do you have, and as your MPP, have you seen the work that I have done? And to know that the people have followed the work and people have benefited from the way we have really stood up for our community makes a huge difference. And I think there's a lot of change in that as well, which we did not have in 2018. The other thing I would say is I know that Andrea has a lot of experience. And I have seen that over the past 4 years working with her. Andrea Horvath, the leader of the Ontario NDP, I think has more experience than Stephen Del Duca or Doug Ford, especially in provincial politics, especially when it comes to a lot of the histories of whether it was to do with social services, our healthcare system, our housing system, and making sure that we work together with everybody, whether it's our federal government or our municipal counterparts. And that is really critical. Sometimes with a lot of knowledge, there's you become a little bit calmer and you become more poised. And I think she's gotten to that point where she's more experienced and she understands that just screaming it is not going to work, but to be able to really work together and to create that momentum across the province.
A supplementary question I want to ask in this regard, because everyone knows that the Progressive Conservative Party says they are working for the hardworking people, but they don't have any vision. We do not see that. We do not see their platforms, but they are particularly Doug Ford has become a little more popular than previously because of his kind of populist politics while during the coronavirus pandemic. But are you feeling a little bit more challenging than the past election for yourself, Dolly?
That's an excellent question, and I think I have to admit that I always have a little bit of a thought of challenges. I know that I cannot take anything for granted. So despite the support that we have, I'm still out door knocking. Some doors I've gone to for a second time. We've finished the entire writing, but we're going back again because I feel that challenge. And I admit that there is always a challenge that exists. In fact, this week we know that Premier Doug Ford actually came to the riding to door knock as well because they think that they have a chance. And I think that is something that we are very concerned about. But I also know that the amount of work that we have done over the past 4 years has really built a lot of relationships within our community, within our community leaders. And I can see the result of that. Because when I talk to people who have been, historically conservatives, for example, or historically liberals, have now come back, and when I have those conversations, or when my volunteers come back, they will tell me that today I talked to someone, who votes green or who votes conservative, but they're voting for you, and they remember what you did during the pandemic or what you did during the for vaccines, for example. And those are really really good conversations that we have, and we see that change. The other thing that you mentioned was with Doug Ford and the way he's done politics. I think there's a really big concern about that as well. And we know that there is I wouldn't even say progressive anymore. I don't think there is anything progressive about the Conservative Party, to be honest. In the last 4 years, I have seen the way they have governed. There was nothing progressive about that. They have destroyed a lot of the environmental policies. They have destroyed housing. They have destroyed public health, and they did not support the healthcare system like we should have. So to me, there is nothing progressive in the policies that they have implemented. We had to push really hard and fight really hard to get some of the things that we have accomplished within our area, within Scarborough, or within the province. And so I think that there are people who recognize that. There are some people who, for example, are leaning towards Doug Ford, because of those reasons, because he has that populist agenda. But I would say in that case, there's, the True Blue, for example, probably have that sort of side as well, rather than what the Conservative Party is offering, because I don't really, I couldn't vouch for what kind of policies that they're really focusing on their agenda.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Let me take one question from two ladies. I think we have two spirited women here. So we can, is either Nusrat or Lalita. So if you have any concern that you would like to share with Dolly.
Who's first?
Okay, Lolita, since you started, so you go ahead.
Okay, thank you for coming and giving us your valuable time. And my question is related with special need child with the special need with adult. Like, what is your plan for adults if they want to start any business independently? They want to run the business. What is your plan? Like, do you have any plan for that?
Okay, thank you, Lolita. Yes, Dolly.
I'm just going to pull up exactly some of the things that we have on our agenda, actually, because we have a platform that we have released, and within that platform, which is fully costed, that means we actually have a budget for it. There's a section for small businesses, for anyone who wants to open their small business, the way to help them, especially for women entrepreneurs, which is very special, and to make sure that we support them in times like the pandemic. So I want to give you a little bit of a highlight for supporting small businesses. The one thing that we would do for those who need the recovery grant for small businesses that have already started, for example, we would make sure that we provide them with the business recovery grant. The other thing that for somebody who wants to start, like you were mentioning, I think one thing that we can support, the provincial government can support, is with the insurance. We know for businesses, insurance is very, very high, and to be able to afford that is very difficult. The other way to support them is to make sure that commercial rent is affordable, especially when you go and you want to start your business. One of the first things you do is look for a space. And a lot of people become discouraged because of how expensive rent is, especially commercial rent, as well as the guidelines for commercial rent. So commercial tenants, for example, don't have as many rights as other tenants do. And one thing that the Ontario NDP is really focusing on is to make sure that we're supporting commercial tenants so that they don't get evicted, like we have seen during the pandemic. I actually had to fight for a lot of the commercial tenants as well. The other thing we have is we know that there's a lot of community members, including Bangladeshi community members in Scarborough, for example, who are incredible entrepreneurs who need support in terms of competition as well. So if we have a Buy Ontario plan where we're focusing on local entrepreneurs, local businesses, then we're giving them a little bit more advantage so that the big box stores like Walmart or Costco do not take away that business, depending on what the business is or the service industry that is. And the final thing I would say is we actually have a focus on making sure that if we have local support for hiring, for example, you can keep up with local hiring as well. So community benefits, for example, is a type of way where we can support local businesses as well. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to highlight from our small business plan within our platform.
Thank you very much, Dolly. But still, just to supplement with Lolita, that you have mentioned number of initiatives. So how those are different from, say for example, a special need adult and a normal adult. How you are going to, differentiate with those things, because whether they will get any additional benefits or additional efforts will be there or not. I think I haven't got the idea very clear from that. Do you have anything that which is very specifically focused for special need adults?
Maybe I didn't understand carefully. Do you mean it when someone starts a business, so an entrepreneur who has special needs?
That's right. That's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
okay. Absolutely, yes. And that's a completely, so this is supplemented with the small business support. We also have a whole section for those who are special needs, for example. And this is not just for starting business, but we also have those who are seeking employment as well. So whether you need support with seeking employment or whether you're starting up business, to be able to provide support for those who do not fall under the regular category of, that are not conventional, for example, because you need a little bit of extra support. And this is, I can also add a few other categories, including special needs, but also for those who are marginalized or come from communities where they do not have the ability, like the rest, for example. So thank you. Actually, that's a really good question.
No problem. Thank you. So, Nusrat, do you have anything? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
I was. Thank you. First, thank you, Dolly, for coming to answer the constituents. So, what question I have is, like, I was reading an article, a CTV article on 30th of April. I don't know if you have read that. So there was this woman with disability. She has some kind of high level of chemical disorder in her system. So she showed the how fragile our system is, how fragile the safety nets. So she applied for affordable housing through the local, municipal, and federal levels, all three levels. Her application for affordable housing did not go through, like it did not come through the to be passed and all that. But ironically, her application for medically assisted death, that got approved, and that got approved very quickly. So that shows, that article showed to us that how fragile our social safety net system is. Like, federal law is helping her in her medically assisted death application very quickly. It is getting through the system, but the affordability of housing issue, that remained in the same level. So I can understand that this when you were in politics, there are different types of laws involved. So what I would like to ask you is that how would you explain like this to our constituents when such things happen?
Nusratapo, I think you have highlighted one of the biggest problems we're facing in our province right now. One of the things we're facing in this country, housing, social housing, as well as safety nets, and the lack of safety nets. It's absolutely just so dire. And when we talk about affordability in general, it has become just extremely drastic that people are having to, it's really impacting their health, it's impacting their mental health, it's impacting a lot of different things. And it breaks my heart to know that there's somebody who's looking for medically assisted death at a time like this and does not have the ability to find affordable homes, a place where she can live peacefully. And right now, and actually not just the past 4 years, almost every single week we had at least one or two cases that came into our office, which was for housing. For people who have been waiting for social housing, their applications are just going through. They have been waiting. Some people have waited for 8 years, some for 12, 13, 14, 16 years. Just absolutely just enormous wait list. And now if we look at the housing wait list, it's about 80,000 people that are waiting on the wait list. And these people include domestic violence cases,
Yeah.
single mothers, for example. We have people who are terminally ill. We have seniors. We have people with disabilities. We have, parents, a single parent, for example, with kid with autism or Down syndrome, a lot of special needs. It's extremely dire situation, and people are waiting and waiting, and they have been told you're still not a priority. I mean, imagine being a senior who's still not a priority. And so we've had to really fight and really push through. And even then, some of them are still waiting because the list is so high. I've had housing sometimes get upset with me because of the number of times we have reached out to them, because we have just gone above and beyond trying to help a lot of these community members. So one of the things I would say is, first of all, we need to increase the amount of housing we have. This is just absolutely, absolutely, absolutely necessary. We do not have enough social housing. We do not have enough co-op homes. We do not have enough affordable homes. Those are all the different steps we need to take, and there are a few things that we could do right now to make sure that people have access to housing. Social housing is great. We need to build more, but making sure that we have the logistical issues within housing also fixed. So, for example, one thing that I've highlighted in Parliament before, and I've actually had multiple people reach out and say, "Thank you so much. No one has ever talked about this in Parliament," which is when you have, let's say, a family where the kids have grown up and they have moved out, and now the parents live there, but they have a 3-bedroom apartment. They're still living there because they have applied for a 1-bedroom apartment, but they're still waiting for the 1-bedroom. So now they're occupying the 3-bedroom when a family who's waiting for a 3-bedroom, but they're stuck in a 1-bedroom with more kids, they could go there. So to be able to fix this vicious cycle is a really important step to make sure that we have that. The other thing I would say is to make sure that we build other types of housing. We need to go back, and this is actually the one of the things I really feel proud of the NDP for, is we're the one who built cooperative housing, and we have them in the riding actually just behind our office. You'll see cooperative housing.
So I had another specific question with regard to housing. Is that so? The federal liberals, they have shaken hands with NDP with the supply and confidence agreement that some of the NDP programs will be implemented by the liberal government. So how do you differentiate your platform in the province from the liberals or from the conservatives, progressive conservatives? How is NDP different? So I would just ask you, this is a very it's a big question, but
Of
if
course.
you answer in a nutshell, that why is NDP different? Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, well, I think you just responded with the question, because the reason why the Liberal Party actually has asked us is because it's the NDP policies that the Liberals will be implementing, and you'll see it's the NDP who has come up with the best ideas in the past 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So when we look at, for example, rent control, when we look at even if you see your health card, for example, the reason we have a health card, not only the healthcare system as well as a health card, it was an NDP government, for example, or it was an NDP policy. If you look at cooperative housing that I was talking about, these are NDP, for example, that did it. There's a lot of workers' rights. These are NDP policies. Our universal healthcare system, NDP policies. So one of the things that I think we're really proud of is even right now, the Liberals are relying on the NDP support. And in return, they're agreeing to do a lot of the things that the NDP has been asking for and has been fighting for a very long time. And right now we're getting it done while being the fourth party right now. Even though we don't have power, the fact that we're able to implement and really push the Liberal government, I think shows the real strength of the NDP. A lot of the policies we have within our platform or had in the past, actually this time we waited for a very long time, is because we had we usually have the Liberals take up our platform and refurbish that. So we usually wait to make sure that we release that so that they don't take it. We end up seeing that a lot of the time.
Thank you. So, thank you, Nusrat.
Yeah, I was just
Thank you.
heat bombed. Like my son is there and he wants to
No
say
problem.
hello.
Okay.
I love seeing
Say
him.
hello.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Nusrat. Thank you, Dolly. So we also have Muhammad Abedin Khan. Abedin, I know that you have number of issues in your mind to share with Dolly. So
Right.
let's start with your very important one first.
Okay, all right. So thank you, first of all, Imam, to running this such a wonderful session. And I would like to thank Dolly to give us time to exchange our concern and views. So since I am involved in education sector, so I'd like to start with that first. So as you know, Dolly, that during this pandemic time, this sector has been hit hard, right? So both at post secondary school education level as well as school level, starting from elementary to high school. And I was listening to CBC this morning while I was driving the car, and listening to experience of many parents across Canada. And they're saying that such one example, I think I can cite here, that that parent was saying that his son was aiming to become an engineer and used to actually score 90% and above in maths pre-pandemic period. Now, during this period, now that student is at grade 12 and is scoring less than 60% and other courses as well. So they're actually worried about their dream is going to be kind of vanished. They can actually go to this school to their expected education. So my question would be to you. I mean, first of all, this part and next part I'm going to tell you later. So I think Liberal Party, Del Luca was saying that they're going to introduce grade 13 after 12. And do you have any kind of plan at school level, or are you planning to add at least 1 year at post-secondary education level, such as college or university, so the students who are actually suffering from specialized courses such as English and math and other biology and physics, chemistry, so that they can actually take that either same like what the Luke was referring, or you have alternative plan, or you can add something at college or university level so that they can go and take this education, and then they are not actually getting a hindrance to get their admission of their own choice of subject or courses or programs. So this is my first part. Can I give a pause, or I can go to the second?
I think let her answer this one
Okay,
first.
right.
In the second round,
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdul, for that. I think you've hit a really important issue that we're facing, especially after the isolation that we had and online learning. Because and as an educator yourself, you know that it's not the same to have online learning when you have real interaction, when you have the ability to learn from your teacher, to learn from your professor. You're able to get a better understanding of the curriculum, better understanding of the subject. You can have real interaction, and that makes a huge difference. I think one of the things that I have heard from a lot of parents, actually a lot of students that I've talked to, who talk about additional support, who talk about the need, and I have actually I was talking to some of our volunteers who are new in university students, so first or second year university students, and they said, it's so much harder because we feel like the last year of high school we didn't get that same level of learning, so it's almost impossible to grasp what's going on. So one of the things I think is really important is to make sure that we're working with the TDSP, which is actually a part of our plan in our platform, is to work with different district school boards. So for us, it's TDSP here to make sure that if kids need that support, how do we provide that? We don't have mandatory grade 13 within our platform because we didn't get that feedback from educators or parents. For us, if they need that support, then we'll provide that support. The other thing is to make sure that we also see other impacts from the isolation and from the lack of support, which is a lot of mental health support, for example, for young people. That's another thing that we have as part of our platform. And finally, I think is also required for hiring more educators as well. I think that's very important, especially when we're looking at high schools and middle schools.
Thank you, Dolly. Now
you
I think let us move to the second round. Though I have one question, but just because of the time constraint, I'm not going for that. So let us start with Shoykot Rujdi.
Again, thank you. Actually, my questions are very brief but very articulate to the point that everyone knows that Doly Begum was the critic for early learning and childcare, and she has done a good job. And she has been working some more activities beyond her portfolio. But one thing I would like to point out that Bangladeshi community in Canada, those who are the newer immigrants, the first generation immigrants, are facing great challenges various kind of challenges. But one particular challenge has not been discussed a lot, maybe within our community, but not in the provincial level or at the provincial parliament. That is the mental health issue. And the clash of cultures when they are migrating, and the newer, because you have been the early learning and child care critic, so you have experienced that kind of experience, that how they are facing, and particularly during their the teenage period, with the religion, with the local culture they brought from their back home, as well as the newer culture they're facing. So this kind of clash of cultures from they're facing, it is really actually taking lives in Canada. So I know that you are aware, you have been in touch with that, but do you have any plan about that, how to address this? What are the plans right now, and what you can do more? We need to know that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm so happy to answer this question, because this is something that we have seen, especially the last 2 years, and the need for that has increased. Our healthcare platform, I'm so proud of it, especially I've been able to influence some parts of that as well from the work we have done. And I think we have a really robust healthcare platform, which is costed as well, which has individual allocation of budget. So for example, when you mentioned mental health, I actually wanted to pull out our platform just to see if I could find the mental health allocation. I believe it's over, there's incremental amounts from 2022 to 2023. For the first year, we'll invest about 500 million, and then it goes on investing a little bit more, and then a little bit more the next year, because we know that these are things we're going to need significant amount as we get through the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic and isolation. You also mentioned specifically about cultural barriers, and what I think I would call it is sort of the bridge that we're on. I know I call myself 1.5 generation, or 1.5 generation immigrant. And for me, I was born in Bangladesh, but I grew up here. I have really strong ties and roots in Bangladesh. My grandma's still alive, and she still lives there, my nanny. But I've lost my other 3 grandparents, and I, my heart cries every time I think about my family, and I want to be able to go back and see them. There is also a lot of strong roots that I've built here. This is my home. I live here. This is my community. I've grown up here, and it's important that what happens here is important. I think as children who grew up here, they feel really torn. And what happens at home, what happens outside, the person that you become when you go to school to fit in with your friends is different from the person that you come back to at home, because of the cultural divide with your parents, for example. And those things makes it really, really difficult for people who are torn between those different worlds. And then when you combine the isolation and the impact of COVID, it has destroyed a lot of people's future in a different way. And I think that is something that we're going to need a lot more than just the traditional type of mental health support, or the language support, or the different multicultural support system that we have, because we're going to have to do a little bit more soul searching in terms of how do we look at mental health? How do we look at mental health as somebody who's from a different religion, or somebody who's from a different culture, or somebody who doesn't even speak English and needs to see a psychiatrist in a different language? Do we even have a psychiatrist who speaks their language? We don't at this moment for a lot of different languages. One of the things I fought for during the pandemic was having vaccine information and COVID information in other languages. And when I realized that the municipalities or the government was really slow in doing this, we started doing them ourselves. And that was because a lot of our local community members did not have access to information or vaccines, because they didn't understand the flyers that were given out. So we were printing them in different languages. And you touched on something so critical, which is mental health and especially cultural barriers. And that's something that we have to do a lot more. I've also worked with local organizations like, for example, Interpreters of Ontario, or the Language Access organization, where they focus on the ability to have different information, or public health with language, removing language barriers. Those are the different types of groups we can consult with, but also yourselves. You all do different, a lot of work within the community, and as community leaders have ideas that I think as politicians, especially politicians from other communities, do not understand. and for us to work together is very important. I know that the expertise that I take in, for example, some of my colleagues might not understand that or have that, and that is very valuable and for us to work together. So within the NDP, we have a really robust plan that addresses that and funding for that, and I think the way it's implemented is going to come from the local grassroots level. The other thing I would just quietly mention really fast is that we have to make sure that we have the right people for these jobs. One of the bills that I proposed in Parliament and it got passed was Bill 98, which was to recognize internationally trained professionals in Ontario. Something that actually I know that Imam Mumbai and I talked about in his previous shows,
That's right.
because this is such an important issue, and we have been fighting for this for decades now. People have been coming here; they do not get recognized for their credential. We can use these people who come here who are experts, for example, whether it's the healthcare sector or other sector, but especially in the healthcare sector. But they will be the one who can speak the language, whether it's Bangladeshi, whether it's Filipino, whether it's Chinese. They will have the knowledge as well as the language. And if we could allow them to go through a process, go through an assessment process that is, practice ready, that is a pathway, they become qualified, and then they're in our healthcare sector. We can really re-envision how our healthcare sector will improve. And I was able to do that in Parliament, and we actually pushed the government enough that now they have a schedule that is taken from our bill, and it has passed. And I'm really hopeful, God willing, it will be implemented in the next couple of months. Right after the election, I know that we'll start seeing a lot of changes as the regulations take place, and the Canadian experience and the language requirement barriers that were there in the past will be removed. So that is something that we're hopeful about, and something that I know a lot of you have advocated for, and that will be something that's a big change for our province that we haven't had in Ontario for a very long time.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
I have only one suggestion in this regard, although it has been covered, that the language is very important here for communicating, and a helpline with the same language, and also the religious education. Whether it is what kind of religion, that is not the issue here. The issue is the conflict of the cultural clash with the religious mindset. So those areas should be covered with the new plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaikat Rushdie. Thank you, Dolly. I believe this is Lolita's turn, but I guess Lolita's issue has been hijacked by Shaikat Rushdie because she was quite keen to ask something about mental health, but Shaikat Rushdie has already, raised
I
that
didn't
issue.
know.
Anyway, but if
No,
there is
just
anything, yeah,
here I just want to mention one thing, that the mental health is a big spectrum, and a lot of things come connected with this, and sometimes we even don't know, like I have issue and I need help. So it's also I want to add here that awareness, that there is nothing wrong to say is, yes, I have some issues, or I need help. So awareness is a very big, I think we should also give importance.
Focus on that.
Yeah.
definitely. I think that kind of conversation or community thoughts will help Dolly to form her policy or the plan of action. Definitely.
Absolutely.
So,
And the other thing that I think, Lolita, you'll appreciate is that we have a really big focus on community health as well. So community health clinics are something that we're going to invest in, and making sure that we have that support so that a lot of people don't end up in the hospitals, because you get the support before you even need to go to the hospital, including mental health.
thank you very much, Dolly. Now it's Nusrat. If you have something, it is not always should be the question. If you have any suggestion, recommendation, thoughts, you can share that as well. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's just that I feel that as a resident of Scarborough, I feel that there are our resources are so low. Our schools don't have like a lot of resources and stuff that we need. So I hope that if elected again, if you are re-elected, I hope that you will look into these issues, because we really suffer in the schools in our community, because our kids go there, and when we face so many issues with the school resources, we really don't know what to do, because these are like, these come from provincial budget. And so we hope that for Scarborough people, you would work for us. So that's our only hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Nusrat. So, Dolly, should we move to Mohammed, or you want to respond to
Sure, I
Nusrat?
can just quickly respond and say
Yeah.
I think Nusrat Apu, you'll like the fact that we have. I know there is about $16 billion backlog for our schools, which is a cause for why we have such a horrible condition in our schools across the province, which is
Yeah.
so heartbreaking because we're not investing in schools, which is the future of our province, future of our children, future.
And
of
we
the-
are investing in Highway 413.
which is just like, and this is why we cannot have Doug Ford or the Conservative government elected. That's more than $10 billion that's going to a highway that nobody wants, and it's also going to impact our environment. It's actually bad for the environment to do
For
this,
the waterways
and yet
and all that, yeah.
exactly, and we could use this $10 billion in our schools with the backlogs, for example. So the NDP plan has incremental every single year. There will be investment made to make sure that we get rid of the backlog, so that we actually fix a lot of the things that we need in our schools. We invest in the resource that you need, that which is what you're talking about, as well as hiring more educators, so that, for example, kids with special needs, and not there is enough support for individual kids within the classroom. So large classrooms, we know that don't work. We need to have educators, assistants, ECEs in the classroom, so that you have the support that you need, which is so very critical. And we actually have a commitment to hire teachers and education workers, as well as investing in the backlog, so that we reduce the backlog as well. And I think that goes back to the previous record and something that you asked before, which is what makes us different. And this is something that makes us different, which is especially from the Liberals, because we know that Doug Ford wasn't the reason why we have the backlogs.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Dolly. And now it's Mohammed Abedin Khan, your turn, but I would appreciate if you just be very brief, because we are running out of time.
Okay, right, because I just wanted to give a kind of picture of the health system in Canada. I'm coming to the province. So according to CMA, Canadian Medical Association survey, in 2011, we had 188 physicians for 100,000 people. And it has risen to 220 only in 2015 for 100,000 people. Now, again, according to CBC study and reported from Health Quality Organizations, Ontario, in 2019, waiting time in Ontario is 16.3 hours in ER, right? And it was 14.4 hours in 2018,
Yeah.
right? And now coming back to specific to our constituency, I'm just reading from the Health Quality Ontario report. So I'm just have chosen Scarborough Health Network. So I'm just reading it from there. So average waiting time in ER to see the doctor by the patient is 1.5 hours. And then in emergency, those are not urgent patient, but low urgency patient, and they have to wait and at least 4 hours.
I think more than that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Maybe
more than
8
that,
hours.
I said at least 4 hours to be seen, and then it says 5.3 hours for high urgency patient. You see, not admitted to hospital. It goes up, and length of stay in emergency room for the patients who are needed to be admitted to hospital. You see, 15.3 hours. So this is a kind of picture I'm just putting. I think you know them, but just to recapitulate or again give ourselves kind of understanding the situation in the health sector. So just like to ask you, is there any concrete plan that on the supply side, especially to supply more doctors, physicians, and other stuff? As you mentioned correctly, that you are going to give international trained doctors, but at the same time, domestically, we have our kids who have required scores through MCAT, but they're not getting any admission because of a dearth of seats in the medical colleges, right? And I think there are kind of a nexus ongoing. and that actually pushed to not to have adequate number of specialist doctors in supply, such as pediatrics or cancer specialist or oncologist, right, cardiac doctor, cardiologist, so on and so forth. So do you have any kind of concrete plan that will actually mitigate this situation in the health sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abedin. But before Dolly respond to that issue, let me just very briefly share my experience. I had an appointment with my family physician doctor on Thursday, few months ago. I received a call from my family physician on Monday. I had an appointment on Thursday, telephone appointment, but I received a call on on Monday. So this is the situation. Anyway, so it's Dolly now.
Thank you so much, Abedin Uncle. I think you've highlighted something that we're facing right now, and it keeps getting worse and worse. I know over the last 5 years or 10 years, so I won't go into the details. I know that lack of staffing, underfunding, all of these things are big issues, so I won't elaborate on that because we're short in time. So I'll actually tell you some concrete steps that we have in our platform for our healthcare plan. One of them is to make sure we include pharmacare and dental care within our plan. That's something that we're fighting for, and these are some of the top lines that we have that I know that you all know about. So I won't go into much detail about it. The other thing is to make sure that we have mental health. But for specifically for Scarborough, I was really happy that our caucus, that the party actually approved the plan within our caucus. And just last week, or was it last week or this week, I actually went and made the announcement with one of my colleagues, Veronica Javier, who did the interview with Imam Bai for TMM. We actually made the announcement talking about hiring of healthcare workers for Scarborough specifically, because of our Scarborough Health Network and what we need. And that is, and you mentioned rightfully, there's a lot of people who are domestic as well, who have amazing skills and they want to be able to contribute. Some of them are actually leaving the province to find work elsewhere because they don't have the residency or they don't have the ability to continue. So there is a few things that we want to do, which includes funding specifically for surgical backlogs, for example, which means that once we invest in that, the hospitals will have the ability and they will need more staff. That's really important. And for surgical backlogs, we're specifically going to actually invest more than $600 million in the first year, as well as 400 the year after, which is going to really drop down the backlog that we have. And the surgical backlog is when you have a surgery, for example, that you're waiting for, and they give you an appointment 8 months after. That's the reality that we face a lot of the time. The other thing that we have is to make sure that we have other specific steps. So for example, for cancer patients to be able to take home drugs, or to be able to have community centers that takes care of a lot of support. So for example, we have adding 20 new centers in communities where they're needed the most. We know a lot of the areas in our province, and you talked about how some areas you have the ratio. I know that some of my colleagues in Northern Ontario, there is about one doctor for about 5,500 patients. I can't even imagine when they get an appointment. Like, it's impossible. So for that, how do we approach this? So there are different steps that we can take while we try to hire, while we get them credentialed, or while we have students who are here become doctors and nurses. At the same time, we can also make sure that if we have enough nurses, and if we have enough community clinics where we have one doctor and a lot of nurses who are able to take care of the community, so that you can focus on the hospitals for the more emergency things. The other thing I would say is to make sure that we have things like repealing Bill 124. And I know that you all know about Bill 124, something that's actually causing a lot of the healthcare workers to leave the province because they feel insulted that they're not getting the benefits and the support that they need, especially after the pandemic. And for Scarborough Health Network specifically, we also have a few things that I want to highlight. That's a concrete plan within our platform, which is completing the infrastructure projects within our two campuses. So Birchmount as well as Centenary, making sure that we actually, and this is a Scarborough Health Network proposal that was given out. Unfortunately, and I hate doing this, but I have to say, since I think it was 13 and a half years ago when Scarborough got funding. Since then, we have had multiple governments, they haven't had proper funding. And then right before the previous election, we had Premier Kathleen Wynne that time come and make a big announcement about how she's going to give funding if they get reelected. And then right before this election, we had Premier Doug Ford come and make an announcement about the same funding, that announcement that was made in 2017, the same announcement made in 2022, right before the election. As if we're people that we kind of you're dangling a carrot to before an election time, and then they use the same promise, but they do not give the funding. And this is the result of a lot of our communities that have gotten neglected for a very long time because we haven't had funding for more than 13, 14 years. So if we have the two centers, two campuses, have the investment, we actually have emergency room that will be expanded. So if we have the emergency space that allows for more people to go in, and if we have the doctors and nurses taking care of them, we actually will have less wait time. So the 16 hours will go down to about 6 hours, and I hope it goes down even more as well. So I think those are some of the steps that are concrete that will result in that, in terms of reduction of the wait time, as well as reduction of surgical backlogs and improving the healthcare system.
Right.
Thank you, Dolly. May I have the permission from our panelists to ask the last question? Can I ask a last question to Dolly?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. So Dolly, I just wanted to check one thing with you. There is a talk in the community that we all know that Ontario or the Canada, we live in a multicultural or diversified environment. Diversity is our strength in Ontario or in Canada. In keeping that diversity in your mind, so what do you think, how important it is to have someone in the parliament or legislature who speaks our language, who can read our mind? So how important it is, and what is your take on this?
Thank you so much. I actually have lots of people who have come to the campaign office and are waiting, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
But I'm very excited to see them. And I think that also relates to what you asked, which is the type of communities that we represent, the diverse communities that we represent, like Scarborough Southwest. We need to be able to make sure that the representative understands that community. They understand the needs of that community. They understand the language of the community, the concerns that people face in that community. I live in Scarborough Southwest. I have grown up here. I belong to a community where I understand a lot of the issues that people face, and for me to be able to do that in Parliament, I think it comes off naturally. It comes from the heart, and I don't think a lot of people who come from outside the area, who do not belong to the area, have that ability. And I think that is something that is really important. The other thing that you talked about, which is diversity, where we talked about all these different issues, whether it's education, mental health, healthcare, and the type of things that we need. All of those things, there is a layer of access. And that access comes with the reduction of barriers that we face because of race, religion, all those things. And when we remove those barriers, that's only possible when we have representatives who understand that. And more than anything, I think for our next generation, if you come to our campaign office, you'll see there's people from all different backgrounds, all different religions. There's a lot of young, girls, for example, who are Bangladeshi, who come up to me and they want to run for office. And it makes me so proud when I see that, because I know that I don't know how much I have been able to accomplish, but I know that I've accomplished one thing, which is I've inspired a lot of young people from Scarborough, from our community, to want to run for office, to want to make a difference, to be able to lead in our communities. And to me, that is absolutely remarkable. And I think it's so very important, especially in a diverse community like Scarborough and the province of Ontario.
Thank you, Dolly. Before we conclude, do you like to say something in your mother tongue, in your mother language?
সবাইকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ, আপনাদেরকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ, অনেক ভালো ভালো প্রশ্ন করছেন, and as always TMM and Imam bhai, you always do amazing job, and আমাকে এই প্ল্যাটফর্ম দেওয়ার জন্য অনেক ধন্যবাদ. I hope that আমাদের Scarborough Southwest-এর সব residents যারা আছেন, you'll see the work that I have done. আগের মতো এগিয়ে আসবেন, আমরা অনেক হোপফুল জুন 2 আবার জিততে পারবো সবাই মিলে এক হয়ে, and I hope that we can win and celebrate together, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dolly. রোজদী ভাই আমরা কি শেষ করব নাকি
আমি
আপনি?
একটা খালি
জি জি
বাংলায় বলি একটু।
জি।
আমরা চাই যে বাংলাদেশি ক্যানাডিয়ানরা সকলে চায় যে ডলি বেগম রি-ইলেক্টেড হবে এবং আমরা তার জন্য শুভকামনা রইল। But she will remain the voice of Bangladeshi Canadians altogether, as well as the constituents of the South Scarborough Southwest region. So we have to see her again in the provincial legislature. Wish you all the best luck.
Wish you all the
Thank you.
best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish you all the best.
Yeah.
All the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the panelists, and thank you very much, Doly Begum. Viewers, thank you very much for being with us. In our next show, we'll talk about something else with some other new guests. Until then, please take care and stay well. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.